What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. This is our top 10 hottest comics of the week. Look back, props, or flops. Now, if you're familiar with this video series, I usually do this with my partner in crime, my co-host Jeff from Comic Book Canon. Today, we are flying solo, but it's the same idea. I am picking my top 3 picks out of last week's top 10 list and looking at what they did in terms of sales numbers when they hit the list. And we're going to be looking at current numbers as of today, and we are going to be giving them either props or flops. All right, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. Check out all the links in the description below as well. And I do want to remind everyone that right now we are giving away another awesome prize for my 10K sub giveaway. This time it is a CGC 9.6 signature series of this beautiful, spectacular Spider-Man number 64. First appearance of Cloak and Dagger. All you need to do to have a chance to win this book is make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, hit the notification bell, like this video, and comment below letting me know that you are subscribed, and then stay tuned until the end of the video to get a second entry by answering a trivia question that I will be asking. You guys can leave the answer in the comments, and that will get you that second entry as well. All right, let's look at the top 10 hottest comics from last week. Of course, we use Cover Price's top 10 lists where they take in the hottest trending books in terms of units sold, and there were definitely some bangers on this list. I was fairly, excited about almost every book on this list. I don't think there were any real duds, but that doesn't mean that all of them are going to get props. So we're going to go into my number 3 pick, folks, and that is Star Wars number 2. This is the first appearance of Obi-Wan, Han Solo, Chewbacca, and this book has been gaining ground for a while, or at least, staying in the limelight with all the Star Wars hype. So let's look at what it did when it hit the top 10 list last week. It had 116% upward trend in sales. Last week's high when it hit the top 10 in a 9.8 was 1,920. Now, as of today, there hasn't been another 9.8 sale, so we can't really gauge, what is it still, viable on the market? Is it holding ground? At least when it comes to those 9.8 sales. Now, let's look at this for context. The last 9.8 sale was back in December of 2021. So a few months back now, and it sold for $3,150. So that was a huge drop in terms of last week's sale for 1920. I will say this, folks. I always say don't get stuck on outliers. This is a book that, if we look at the raw numbers, which we're going to do in a moment here, this book, though, doesn't have a lot of 9.8s on the market at any given time. There's only been a small few sold over the last, year and a half or so. So, I always say all it takes is one or two people to have, a bit of that FOMO. They don't want to miss out on the book, and they're in that moment. Maybe they're bidding it up or and all it takes is one or two people to really drive the price of that book up right then. And it can make it an outlier, and we can't look at outliers to gauge the health of a book on the market at any given time. Now, I mean, is that to say that this book hasn't necessarily had some type of cool off? I'm not saying that, but we just don't have the data to gauge it. We can't. If somebody else is telling you, is coming and talking about these books like I am right now, and they're saying that this book is crashing or dropping like crazy right now because of these 9.8 numbers, I'm sorry, they are misconstruing the data. That's not accurate. It's not accurate to say that at all. It's not accurate for me to say that it's not, dropping either. I just can't tell you one way or the other because there's not enough data there. Who knows? Another 9.8 could go on the market next week and it could sell close to that $3,000 mark. We just don't know. Something to watch for sure. So my recommendation, because I'm not here to tell you to buy or not to buy, but my recommendation is always, as it's been, for the last however many months that I've been saying this, I personally just would stay away from the 9.8s. Now let's look at the average raws. When it hit the top 10 list last week, average raw was selling for 98, and this week 109. So that's an 11% increase over the average raw. But what are average raws? Again, it doesn't pertain to a specific grade. It's simply taking all the raw sales, no matter the grade, and dividing the total value by the units sold. So, take the raw sales with a grain of salt. But one thing that I did notice with the raw sales is that over the last year or so, the average raw has been pretty consistent. It has been pretty consistent month after month. So I do think that this book has been healthy on the market. I think it's staying healthy on the market. And we had the Obi-Wan show coming. The trailer just blew my mind. So do I give this book props or flops? Although I'm weary about the 9.8s, but that's any book right now. Be cautious. I'm giving this book props all the way, folks. I think that a lot of Star Wars these books have great potential right now, but these books have been overlooked in my humble opinion for a long time, and these are all legacy Star Wars characters. In the Obi-Wan show, if it delivers like I think it's going to deliver, I see this book continually increasing. I don't see this as something that's going to fizz out. We get a trailer, it spikes, we get the show, and then the show's done and it cool offs. I think that this can be something that really laminates these characters up to that next level. And I even said that after I saw the trailer, I think that this could be one of the best live action Star Wars properties since the original trilogy. I have high hopes. So props all the way for this book, folks, for this book. Let's go to my second pick on the list, and that is Amazing Spider-Man number 265. This is the first appearance of Silver Sable. So what sparked this? Well, we got an announcement that Sony is casting the Foreigner in an upcoming Spider-Man related Sony project. So the Foreigner is directly correlates to Silver Sable, and a lot of people are speculating that, well, if the Foreigner's coming, Silver Sable is going to come at some point. I've always been a fan of the Silver Sable character, but let's look at the numbers. When it hit the top 10 last week, 160% upward trend in sales with a high 9.8 of 599. Well, as of today, this week, it was, I believe, 2 days ago that 9.8 sold for $610. So a little 2% bump in that 9.8 sale. Now, a 9.8 high prior to the Foreigner casting, 525. It was I think it was a 650 buy it now or best offer. The best offer was accepted for 525. So not too crazy of an increase once we got this Foreigner casting call. Now let's look at the raw numbers and then I'll dive into my personal thoughts and props or flops. Last week's average raw when it hit the top 10, $40. This week's $58. So that's a nice little bump right there. Now prior to the Foreigner casting, $38. So not much from, once the casting was announced, we get some hype coming in, but then we get that $18 bump the following week, which is this current week. Here's my thoughts on this. We have seen absolute crazy speculation jumps in books. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a casting. It could be a rumor that has no validity in these books absolutely go crazy. You can see a $5 to $10 book jump up to $40, $50. You could see a 9.8 that was selling for $80 jump up to $300, $400, and sometimes even up close to $500. So we get an official announcement of the Foreigner, which directly ties to Silver Sable. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is my personal thoughts. I do believe that Sony is going to bring Silver Sable into the mix at some point. I believe it's inevitable, and it works for Sony, in my humble opinion. So, for me to see these increases and not have them be like extreme, like these books are doubling, 30, 40, 50% increase in value, it makes me okay with this book being on this list. It shows that people are trying to get ahead of this, and that's what you need to do. You need to get ahead of the curve. And we didn't get a Silver Sable announcement. So to say that they're getting ahead of the curve by paying just a little bit more right now for this book, is valid. If this book was going for extreme amounts of what it was going for prior to the Foreigner leak or the Foreigner announcement, I would give this book flops all the way, because it shows me that, look, you know, you miss the boat and you're paying way too much too fast just because of some type of announcement. But because the prices are just trending slowly upward and there's not these major increases, I'm going to give this book props, folks. I'm going to give this book props. I'm going to monitor this book, because I do feel, like I said, if next week a 9.8 sells for like $800 or something like that, and a raw is selling for $100, then it gets into sketchy ground. And I'm going to say, folks, you guys, you need to slow it down. You know, this book, if we don't get a Silver Sable announcement, you know, over like the next year, so to say, you know, this book is definitely going to cool off, in my humble opinion. And if you're paying that much of an increase from where it's at right now, that's scary grounds, and that would be a flop for me. But for right now, with the book staying steady at where it is, I give it props. Amazing Spider-Man, folks. You know, Copper Age book. Silver Sable is a solid character. I'm not saying she's top tier, but she's solid. This book has a long-term potential, no matter what happens in live action. So right now, props, but be very, very cautious with what you guys do with this book if you're in the market to buy. All right, we have my number one book to pick. All right, but before we do, folks, I want to take less than 60 seconds to thank and talk about today's sponsor, PopCultureZone.com. PopCultureZone.com is an online shop focusing on hot new comics, including exclusive and incentive variants, CGC graded comics, and tons of other inventory, including pop culture toys and other collectibles, all at low and competitive prices. PopCultureZone.com ships all over the US, and if you are buying raw comics, they offer flat rate shipping of only $4.99. That's right, $4.99. Absolute craziness, right? And there's no taxes included, excluding New Jersey. Pop Culture Zone is also on eBay, where they hold a 100% positive feedback rating with over 8,000 completed transactions for this year alone. Make sure to check out the link to their website below, as well as their eBay link, so be sure to give them a follow there as well. All right, folks, are we ready for my number one pick from the top 10 list? And it is Ms. Marvel number 5. So, this is the origin and first costume, the first official costume of Kamala Khan is Ms. Marvel. But the reason why I made the list more than anything is because we got the Ms. Marvel trailer, and they paid homage. There was the homage of Kamala sitting on the lamp overlooking New York. And it was an amazing shot in the trailer, and it brought a lot of people back to this book. So let's look at the numbers when it hit the top 10 list. 170% upward trend in sales, where it had a high 9.8 sale of $330. Now, as of this week, it had a high 9.8 of $396. So that's an increase of 20%. Solid. Again, be careful of just looking at highs, but there is a very small amount of 9.8s on the market right now, so people are going for them. Now, before the trailer announcement, I could find no 9.8 sales on the market of this book. So it's hard to gauge if this book was like, you know, trending really low and then just that trailer bumped it up. But there was a second print 9.8 that sold for like, I think, 60 something, $65, $70, somewhere around there. But we can't compare that. That's the second print. But let's look at these raws. So last week's average raw, when it hit the top 10, it was sitting at 46. Where this week's, it was sitting at 45. So very, very similar. It's a more modern book, so you're going to find a lot of, you know, higher grades for the most part. Prior to this trailer, though, it was $17. So that right there shows that this trailer really boosted this book up. So I would have to make an assumption that there was a 9.8 sale that I hadn't seen, that is somewhere on the census and on the market. I can probably assume that it was nowhere around the $300 mark. That's just a guess. But if just looking at what the raw sales have done. Now, the hype around this book, because of just this cover shot being shown in the trailer, that's always fun, but for me, it's not a reason to go spec after a book at all. It is not. It's just, I mean, we saw something like that similar to, where Cap and Tony were fighting in Civil War, and it was the homage to the Civil War cover where they were, Tony was putting his blaster up to Cap's shield, and they're just going at it. Boom. That was such an epic moment that was brought to life in the MCU. But for something like that to increase the value of a book so much, I think is bad news and dangerous and is faulty. But this book is Kamala Khan's origin. If her first appearance, she has her the cameo, the first, if those are out of your price range, this is still a solid, affordable book to go after, even with this bump. It was extremely, you can get this book for $20 before this trailer. That right there, in my humble opinion, was a huge bargain for the potential of this book long term. To get it around the $45, $50 mark, I'm not going to say it's a bargain. It could have some up and downs. I don't know how the show is going to be received, but it's still decently affordable to where you're not dumping your bank account. If the show is well received, I think that this book could definitely continue to increase in value for the short term with some ebb and flow, but look, we got this character showing up in her own show, and then she's going to show up next year in the Marvel's film on the big screen. So I think Marvel Studios is going to be using this character a lot, which is going to eliminate, in my humble opinion, a lot of wiggle room for extreme ups and downs and peaks and valleys. So while I would be very cautious with spending top dollar for this book, remember, this 45, 46, that's average. I think there were some raw books selling for up to like 75. Be careful. Be very careful. This is one where you can check out your LCSs, be patient with it, see what's out there, see if you might still be able to get this one for around the $20, $25 mark. And if so, I think that's a good deal if you're in the market for it. But the real question is, do I give this book props or flops? This was a tough one because, like I said, if people are specking on this just because of the cover, I would have given it flops. But because it's her origin, I'm going to give this book props right now. And again, it's, I don't think these numbers are extreme. Again, I would heavily stay away from the 9.8, but I give this book props because I do see long-term potential for this book. Absolutely. So, folks, it was hard for me to give flops on a lot of these books this week because I think a lot of them are decently solid, and that's hard to say. There's usually, when I look at these lists, there's always some that are like big flops in my opinion, but I really enjoyed, for the most part, these three books. There's always caution involved. I always tell you all to be patient if you're in the market for these books. Be willing to take the risks if you guys are going out there and speculating and trying to invest in these books. But overall, I think there was a lot of potential for the three books that I picked today. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. The books I picked, would you have given them props or flops? Let me know why. But guys, we're not done. I do want to remind you all that if you're in need of comic book supplies, check out bcwsupplies.com. You can use the code JOURNOS to receive 10% off of your order. Save some money. That code never expires as well. You can use it as many times as you want. And of course, I give a huge shout out to all of my Patreon members for supporting the channel. Thank you guys so much. And to all of my YouTube channel members for supporting the channel. Thank you guys so much. But we have a trivia question, folks. We have a trivia question. Now, we are giving away that beautiful CGC Signature Series of Cloak and Dagger. But we did have a spec book on the list today that made the top 10 that I talked about, and that was ASM 265, First Appearance of Silver Sable. So my question is today, and this pertains to Comic Book Canon because we had this individual on as a guest on the Comic Book Canon. Who was co-creator and the first individual to draw Silver Sable? That is the trivia question. If you guys answer that in the comments below, and if you are subscribed and follow all the other rules, you will get an extra entry into winning that beautiful Signature Series Spectacular 64 First Cloak and Dagger. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be well, and until next time.